Jerusalem. A name that echoes with the weight of empires, the whispers of prophets, and the prayers of billions. This is not merely a city of stone and street, it is a city of the soul, a terrestrial stage for a divine drama that has unfolded over 3 millennia. What if the true story of this hallowed ground is not just one of conquest and faith, but a relentless, cyclical story of destruction and rebirth, of a spirit so profound it has refused to be extinguished by the greatest powers the world has ever known? We are about to journey to the very core of its creation, to understand how a remote hilltop fortress became the spiritual center of the world, the object of unending desire, and the enduring heart of a people's identity. If you are ready to delve into a story that intertwines history, faith, and the very essence of human aspiration, then you have found your destination. Take a moment to support this journey into the past by hitting that like button and subscribing to our channel. By joining our community, you become part of the exploration, ensuring we can continue to uncover the most powerful stories ever told. Let's begin. The story of Jerusalem does not begin with a divine decree with the most fundamental element of life: water. In the arid landscape of the Judean mountains, a single, reliable water source, the Gihon Spring, was a miracle of survival. It was this spring that allowed a small settlement to cling to the rocky ridge known as the Ophel as far back as the Chalcolithic period, more than 5,000 years ago. This was a place of pragmatic beginnings, a settlement later known as Shalem. Long before it was a holy city, it was a strategic outpost, a fortified town that owed its existence to geology and geography. Its early inhabitants were the Canaanites, and later a resilient tribe known as the Jebusites, who built formidable walls and understood the defensive power of their elevated home, surrounded on 3 sides by deep valleys. For generations, this fortress of Jebus stood as a stubborn, unconquered island in the midst of the Israelite tribal territories. The transformation from a regional stronghold to a city of destiny began with the vision of one man, King David. Around the year 1000 BCE, David, having united the fractious northern and southern tribes of Israel, sought a capital. He needed a city that was politically neutral, one that belonged to no single tribe and could therefore belong to all. His eyes fell on the Jebusite fortress. Its conquest was a masterstroke of strategy. Instead of a bloody frontal assault, the Bible recounts how David's men, led by his commander Joab, infiltrated the city through its water shaft, a vertical tunnel used by the Jebusites to access the Gihon Spring from within the walls. By exploiting this single vulnerability, the city fell. David claimed it, renamed it the City of David, and in a move of political and spiritual genius, he brought the Ark of the Covenant, the sacred chest containing the tablets of the 10 Commandments, to his new capital. In that moment, Jerusalem was transformed. It was no longer just a seat of government. It had become the sacred heart of the Israelite nation, the meeting point between the divine and the human. While David established Jerusalem as the nation's heart, it was his son, Solomon, who would give it a soul of incomparable splendor. Solomon's reign was a golden age of peace and prosperity, and he channeled the kingdom's immense wealth into the construction of a permanent home for the Ark of the Covenant, the first temple. This was not merely a building, it was a cosmic statement, a structure designed to be the earthly dwelling place of God. Built atop Mount Moriah, the traditional site of Abraham's binding of Isaac, the temple was a marvel of the ancient world. Solomon imported the finest materials, fragrant cedar from Lebanon, massive blocks of hewn stone, and dazzling quantities of gold and bronze. Inside, the Holy of Holies, the innermost sanctum, housed the Ark, veiled in deep shadow and accessible only to the high priest, only once a year. The temple's dedication was the single greatest national event, cementing Jerusalem's status as the one and only center for sacrificial worship. It institutionalized the practice of pilgrimage, requiring all Israelite men to travel to the city 3 times a year, weaving Jerusalem into the very fabric of their religious and cultural life. This golden age, however, was not destined to last. After Solomon's death, his kingdom, strained by heavy taxation and internal rivalries, violently split in two. Jerusalem remained the capital of the southern kingdom of Judah, while the 10 northern tribes formed their own kingdom. This division fatally weakened the Israelites, making them pawns in the great power games of the ascendant empires of the Near East. For centuries, the prophets of Israel, men like Isaiah and Jeremiah, walked the streets of Jerusalem, pleading with its kings and people to remain faithful to their covenant, warning of dire consequences if they strayed into idolatry and social injustice. Their warnings went largely unheeded. Finally, in 586 BCE, the prophecies came to a horrifying fruition. The Babylonian emperor Nebuchadnezzar, after a brutal 18-month siege that left the city starving, Solomon's magnificent temple was systematically looted and then burned to the ground. The city's walls were demolished, its palaces and homes reduced to rubble. It was a national trauma of unimaginable proportions. The spiritual heart of the nation was ripped out, and its leading citizens, the scribes, priests, and artisans, were forcibly marched into exile in Babylon. For the Jewish people, the Babylonian exile was a period of profound crisis and existential questioning. How could their holy city be destroyed? Had their God abandoned them? Yet, in the crucible of exile, their faith was not extinguished. It was transformed. Without a temple, they developed new forms of worship centered on prayer, community, and the study of their sacred texts. The synagogue began to take shape as an institution. The stories, laws, and prophecies of their people were gathered and canonized. The memory of Jerusalem became a central pillar of their identity, a symbol of both their loss and their hope for redemption. The poignant words of Psalm 137, "If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget its skill," became the eternal vow of a people scattered, a promise that their connection to the city could not be broken by distance or time. The dream of Zion, the hope of return, became the driving force of their survival. After 70 years, the political tides shifted. The Persian Empire, under Cyrus the Great, conquered Babylon. In a revolutionary act of statecraft, Cyrus issued a decree in 538 BCE allowing the exiled Jews to return to their homeland and rebuild their temple. The return was not a single glorious event, but a long and arduous process led to find Jerusalem like Zerubbabel and Ezra. Amidst political opposition from neighboring peoples and their own meager resources, they began the monumental task of reconstruction. The cornerstone of this effort was the building of the Second Temple. Completed in 516 BCE, it may have lacked the legendary opulence of Solomon's, but its significance was immense. It stood as a powerful symbol of rebirth and the enduring covenant between God and His people. Jerusalem was once again the center of Jewish life, and the rituals of pilgrimage and sacrifice were restored. The Second Temple period, lasting nearly 600 years, was an era of immense religious and political ferment. Jerusalem was under the dominion of successive empires: the Persians, the Greeks under Alexander the Great, the Ptolemies of Egypt, and the Seleucids of Syria. This era saw the flourishing of Jewish thought and the rise of different sects like the Pharisees, Sadducees, and Essenes, who debated the proper interpretation of Jewish law and tradition. The powerful influence of Hellenistic culture also created a deep internal struggle over assimilation versus cultural preservation. This tension erupted into violence in the 2nd century BCE when the Seleucid king Antiochus IV Epiphanes attempted to outlaw Judaism and the resulting Maccabean revolt. A seemingly hopeless rebellion led by the Hasmonean family resulted in a miraculous Jewish victory, the cleansing of the temple and the establishment of a brief period of Jewish independence. This victory is still celebrated today in the festival of Hanukkah. This hard-won independence was eventually lost to the rising power of Rome. In 63 BCE, The Roman general Pompey captured Jerusalem, and Judea became a client state of the Roman Empire. Was often brutal and insensitive to Jewish religious customs, sowing the seeds of rebellion. It was during this period that Rome appointed Herod the Great as king of Judea. A ruthless tyrant but also a prolific builder, Herod undertook a colossal renovation of the Second Temple, turning it into one of the most magnificent edifices in the Roman world. He expanded the Temple Mount platform to a massive size. The Western Wall, the holiest site in modern Judaism, is a surviving portion of this platform's retaining wall. It was into this world of Roman occupation and Herodian splendor that a new, transformative figure emerged, Jesus of Nazareth. His teachings, his final journey to Jerusalem, his confrontation with the authorities in the temple, his crucifixion, and the belief in his resurrection would give birth to Christianity. These events made Jerusalem the most sacred city on earth, the site of humanity's salvation. The simmering Jewish resentment against Roman rule boiled over into the Great Jewish Revolt in 66 CE. After 4 years of brutal fighting, the Roman legions, commanded by the general Titus, laid siege to Jerusalem. The result, in 70 CE, was a catastrophe that rivaled the Babylonian destruction 6 centuries earlier. The Romans breached the city's defenses, slaughtered a vast portion of its population, and completely destroyed the Second Temple. The Arch of Titus in Rome, which still stands today, depicts Roman soldiers carrying off the temple's sacred menorah as spoils of war. The destruction of the Second Temple was a watershed moment in history. It ended the era of sacrificial Judaism and triggered the final great diaspora of the Jewish people from their ancestral land. In 135 CE, after a second failed revolt, the Emperor Hadrian attempted to erase Jerusalem's Jewish identity entirely. He rebuilt it as a pagan Roman colony named Aelia Capitolina and banned all Jews from entering the city on pain of death. The city's identity was reimagined once again with the rise of Christianity within the Roman Empire. In the 4th century, Emperor Constantine made Christianity the state religion. His mother, Helena, traveled to Jerusalem and identified the sites of Jesus' crucifixion and burial. Constantine ordered the construction of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre on that spot, and Jerusalem was transformed into the spiritual capital of Christendom. Magnificent churches and monasteries were built, and the city became the primary destination for Christian pilgrims, its landscape now defined by the story of Jesus. This Christian dominance was challenged in the 7th century by the dramatic rise of Islam. In 638 CE, the Muslim Caliph Umar conquered Jerusalem peacefully. The city, known to Muslims as Al-Quds, or the Holy, is revered as the 3rd holiest site in Islam. It is the location of the Prophet Muhammad's miraculous night journey, during which he ascended to heaven from the Temple Mount. To honor this event, the Umayyad caliphs built 2 of Islam's most iconic structures on the Temple Mount itself, the stunning Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. For the next 13 centuries, Jerusalem would be ruled predominantly by Muslim powers, from the Umayyads and Abbasids to the Fatimids, Ayyubids, Mamluks, and Ottomans. This long period was punctuated by the violent interlude of the Crusades, when Christian armies from Europe conquered the city in 1099, holding it for nearly a century before it was recaptured by the great Muslim leader Saladin. A long period of relative stability came under the Ottoman Empire, which took control in 1517. It was the Ottoman Sultan, Suleiman the Magnificent, who rebuilt the city's majestic defensive walls in the 16th century, the very walls that still encircle the old city today. Throughout these centuries, Jerusalem remained a diverse city, home to its core Muslim and Christian communities, and a small but persistent Jewish community that clung to its sacred ancestral home despite often difficult circumstances. The 20th century unleashed a torrent of change that would redefine the city once more. The collapse of the Ottoman Empire in World War I led to the British Mandate for Palestine. This era was marked by rising migration of Jews returning to their ancestral land, fueled by the Zionist movement, and growing conflict with the resident Arab population. The 1948 war that followed Israel's declaration of independence left the city divided for the first time in its history. A scar of concrete and barbed wire ran through its heart. West Jerusalem became the capital of Israel, while East Jerusalem, including the Old City with its holy sites, fell under Jordanian control. For 19 years, Jews were denied access to the Western Wall. In the Six-Day War of 1967, Israeli forces captured East Jerusalem, reuniting the city under Israeli rule. The emotional images of Israeli soldiers reaching the Western Wall for the first time resonated around the world, seen by many Jews as a prophetic fulfillment. For Palestinians, however, it marked the beginning of a military occupation. Today, Jerusalem is a vibrant, thriving, and deeply complex modern city, yet one where the past is intensely present. The Old City remains a breathtaking labyrinth of faith, divided into its Jewish, Muslim, the call of the muezzin from the minarets of the Temple Mount, the ringing of church bells from the Holy Sepulchre, and the murmur of prayers at the Western Wall all mingle in the air. The city is a microcosm of both the world's greatest spiritual aspirations and its most intractable conflicts. Its story is a testament to its unparalleled significance to three world religions, each of which has shaped its landscape and its identity. The origin of Jerusalem is not a single event, but a continuous, unfolding story of creation, destruction, and an unyielding resilience. It remains a city of profound sanctity and profound struggle, a golden cup that continues to overflow with history, faith, and an undiminished power to move the human soul.